Never visit during Golden Week. Everything's closed at New Year. Definitely come in March to see the cherry blossoms. Over and over, you'll hear the same advice about when to visit Japan and when to stay away, but there's just one small problem. Most of it is way too general, or just downright hogwash. The simple fact is that you can visit Japan any time of year and still have the most unbelievable trip. So in this video, I'm going to debunk the common myths about when you shouldn't come to Japan, show you how to plan your trip around the country's notorious climate with my special secret weapon, and tell you my personal favourite time to travel here. And trust me, this is going to get you ahead of 99% of other visitors. You'll be able to travel during the dirt cheap periods when most people stay away, and you'll learn some creative tricks for choosing unique places to explore. But before we get started, just a warning, this is a channel about travel all across Japan. So if you think that's spelled Tokyo, then perhaps you're in the wrong place and you might want to jog on. But first, a little quiz for you. What's the difference between these two visitors? If you said one's having the trip of a lifetime and the other one's just dropped his smartphone down the toilet, you just lost $1 million. Thanks for playing. Because the correct answer is this geezer did some homework before his trip and this one played copious amounts of GTA instead. The reason why we have most of the bad time to visit Japan myths is that so many people don't get organised until the very last minute. Lazy gits who don't prepare also tend to be the most vocal about everything being someone else's fault. Let's take Golden Week for example. Supposedly the absolute worst time of year to visit. Every year at the end of April and start of May there are a couple of strategically placed national holidays, allowing workers to take a few days paid vacation and get a mind-blowing 7 to 10 days off straight. Welcome to the land of death by overwork, right? Now it's true that many people use this chance to take a trip somewhere, but if you believe all the hype, you'll think this means every single person in Japan is visiting every single tourist attraction, taking every single seat on every single bullet train, booking out every last hotel room, meaning that every last square inch of the country is completely and utterly sardined to an inch of its life. But once you've actually experienced Golden Week in Japan for yourself, you'll know just how nonsensical this is. The truth is, travelling at this time is perfectly doable by following 3 brain-dead simple steps. Number 1, fly into Japan before Golden Week and leave after it finishes. This is so you can avoid the crush at the airports when tons of Japanese head overseas, and again when they return. The same is true for the railways and roads, so just sidestep the escape and return days and eliminate tons of stress immediately. Number 2, book your Shinkansen well in advance and consider travelling earlier and later than usual in the day. Since Golden Week is a popular time to travel domestically, booking a long time ahead is more important than at other times of year. And the same thing goes for hotels and accommodation. With demand going up, prices also go up. But if you sort it out ahead of time, you'll have access to all the best deals before they disappear. Although, pro tip here, if you're late to the party and you're short on options, hostels and guest houses don't tend to change their prices for Golden Week, so check those out if you find you're in a pinch. And the last step, which is doable even if you've been completely lobotomized, is don't visit the obvious tourist hotspots. I mean, think about it. The most popular destinations are going to be slathered in extra tourists in Golden Week. Case in point, this is the Golden Temple on a day when all trains into Kyoto were cancelled. So can you imagine visiting on a normal day? Yes, it's always packed. So why on earth would you want to visit such a place during Golden Week? The same goes for Universal Studios, Tokyo Disney, all the other top spots. Don't even think about it unless you're trying to break the world record for the most time spent queuing in one lifetime. Instead, go check out some of the less famous attractions, or better yet, less visited cities in Japan. They're going to be much less crowded. For my money, I think you'll have a much more interesting trip getting away from the crowds, and if you're short on ideas, you might want to sign up for my monthly Insider email, because I'm always recommending the best of the overlooked destinations in Japan. But there's a second, even bigger myth that really snags my synapses, because if you believe this one, you're passing up one of the absolute best times to be in Japan. But first, a quick question for you. When is a national holiday not a national holiday? Answer: when it's in Japan. See, I hear a lot of shameless nonsense from people who say that everything is closed in Japan over New Year. Except this is utter rubbish too. I mean, where do you think this is? Europe? Don't believe me? All these places are open 365 days of the year, and these are just the ones I picked off the top of my head. Now you can add to the list pretty much every single temple and shrine across the country because they never close. I could go on, but I've travelled enough over the New Year holidays to know that there's more than enough that stays open to keep you busy. Now sure, outside the bigger cities you will find more attractions do close, and in general museums close for about the week over the New Year holiday. But again, if you do a bit of planning ahead, you can easily schedule a visit when they're open, either before or after the New Year break. It's really not that difficult. Eating out isn't a problem either. You can always find somewhere open, especially in the cities. Chain restaurants tend to remain open, as well as many independent eateries, although you may find they have shorter opening hours on December 31st or New Year's Day. The New Year is actually a fantastic time to travel in Japan for two major reasons. Many Japanese get really busy at the end of December trying to tie up loose ends at work or going to so-called forget the year parties. Then many people go home to spend the holiday with their families or parents, which means there's less domestic tourism and attractions are quieter. You also get the chance to experience New Year traditions here, like many people making their New Year visit to the temple or shrine. Now even if you don't join them, you can still see special things happening. For example, I once took a flight on New Year's Day and saw traditional rice pounding happening right there in the airport. As with Golden Week, just make sure you plan ahead and check the opening days for places you want to visit. You'll also want to book your seats on the Shinkansen if you're travelling on the escape the city or return to the city days at the start and end of the New Year period, because those days obviously get very busy. Now if you're finding this video helpful so far, go drop me a thumbs up and then tell me what's the time everybody else recommends that you should never ever visit Japan because of the weather. Rainy season, summer, winter? Yeah, I've heard it all before, but what if I told you there was a way to completely delete the weather you don't like? Well, I'd be lying. I don't have quite those kinds of superpowers just yet, but instead I do have a simple trick for making the most out of every single season in Japan, and this involves just a smidgen of creativity and flexibility. Let's say you want to visit Japan in February. Supposedly it's cold in Tokyo. Too cold for me, you might think to yourself. Sounds like a bad time to visit, right? Well, if you're dead set on just visiting Tokyo, could well be, but if you have just a teeny little bit more imagination, you could go check out one of Okinawa's islands, where you can expect temperatures in the low 20s. Yes, low 20s in January and February. What about the summer, you say though? Okinawa's not going to save me then, it's just going to roast me. Well, yes, that's right, genius. Good if you want to go scuba diving, but if not, in those hottest months of July and August, I recommend visiting Hokkaido or Aomori Prefecture, where you can expect high temperatures to be at least 5 degrees cooler than what you'll get in Tokyo. But then of course there's the rainy season. You have the heat, you add the rain, and you get terrible humidity. It's a match made in hell. I've travelled across Japan a few times during rainy season, and almost without fail, everyone has shouted at me, "No, Andrew, that's a terrible time to travel. It's going to rain every day." Guess what? That's utter rubbish too. I had a trip of 10 days, it only rained on 2 of them. I had a week-long trip, again, only rained on 2 days. I had a 9 days trip, and all I had were 30-minute showers in the morning, and then the rest of the day was dry. See, most people think that rainy season means non-stop rain. That's just complete guff. They also think every single day in June and July is rainy. Again, it's complete nonsense. See, the trouble with most general ignorance out there about the best and worst times to visit Japan is it's way too general, and what you actually need is cold hard facts about the specific places you want to visit. This means you can figure out what you need to pack and see what kind of conditions you can expect based on data, not vague generalizations by people who've never visited that place at that time of year. Now, you can also save a bunch of money by traveling smarter this way. So let me tell you about my secret weapon, Weather Spark. This tells you everything you need to know about the climate anywhere in Japan as well as the rest of the world. When I planned to travel to Niigata in June, I wanted to minimize the number of rainy days I could get. And Weather Spark told me that the first half of June was likely to be much drier than the second half of the month. See, while other people are quick to mention that rainy season arrives in June, they ain't so quick to tell you that it doesn't arrive at the same time across the country. And they probably won't tell you that Hokkaido doesn't even have a rainy season. Look up your destination and judge for yourself when it's good to visit. Weather Spark is also incredibly handy for deciding what kind of clothes to pack for your trip thanks to the compare feature. Plug in your destination city, then compare it to where you live and figure out what's different in terms of weather for you, because this is way more helpful than generic, idiotic, "It's still cold in March" advice. I mean, compared to where fall the surface of the sun. So now that you know that Golden Week and New Year aren't nearly as bad as everyone claims, and that you can visit during rainy season if you know what you're doing, you might be wondering to yourself about my personal recommendation for when to visit. But if that isn't obvious to you by now, you clearly haven't been paying attention. See ya.